My name is Nora Mitchell. I am 28 years old. For 17 years, from the time I was 8 until I was 25, I worked in my father's restaurant. Not occasionally, not as a summer job. Every single day, before school, after school, weekends, holidays, summers. I folded napkins before I learned long division. I could break down a kitchen station by the time I was 12. I ran the front of house, managed reservations, covered for absent staff, created recipes, handled customer complaints, and closed the restaurant alone more nights than I can count. My father never paid me a single dollar, not once in 17 years. No paycheck, no allowance, no tips, nothing. My brothers Tyler and Ryan worked in the same restaurant. Tyler managed the books. Ryan worked the kitchen. They received full salaries from the day they turned 16, raises every year, holiday bonuses, even profit sharing after they turned 21. When I asked my father why I was not paid, he said the same thing every time. "This is a family business, Nora. We all pitch in. You should be grateful you have a place here." I was not grateful. I was trapped. But I did not know that yet. 2 months ago, my father announced he was selling Mitchell's on Main, our family restaurant, for $4.2 million. He called a family meeting to discuss how the money would be divided. He invited Tyler. He invited Ryan. He did not invite me. I found out about the sale from Tyler's wife, who mentioned it casually at a birthday party, assuming I already knew. My share of $4.2 million after 17 years of unpaid labor was exactly zero. But here is the part my father never expected. My mother, Catherine Mitchell, who died of pancreatic cancer 8 years ago, had been watching the whole time. She saw every hour I worked. She saw every paycheck I never received. And in the last 2 years of her life, she did something about it. She documented every shift I ever worked, every task I ever performed, every holiday I covered while my brothers took vacations. She met with a labor attorney named Ruth Kimball in secret, and she built a file, a legal case so thorough, so meticulous, so devastating, that when the total was finally calculated, even the attorney was stunned. The number was $1.2 million, and my father had no idea it was coming. Maplewood, New Jersey, population 24,000. A tree-lined suburban town 20 miles west of Manhattan where everybody knows your name and your family's business, sometimes literally. Mitchell's on Main opened on March 3, 1989. My father, Frank Mitchell, was 26 years old, freshly married to my mother, Catherine, and convinced he was going to build something that lasted generations. He took out a $90,000 small business loan, signed a lease on a narrow storefront on Maplewood Avenue, and opened a 32-seat American grill with a handwritten menu and secondhand chairs. Within 5 years, Mitchell's on Main was the most popular restaurant in town. My father had a gift for food. I will give him that. His smoked brisket was legendary. His pot roast was the thing people drove from 3 towns over to eat. The Newark Star-Ledger called it the best family restaurant in Essex County in 1996. By 2000, my father owned the building outright. 60 seats, a staff of 14, revenue just under $800,000 a year. The Mitchell family was simple on the surface. Frank was loud, commanding, old school, the kind of man who believed that hard work solved everything, and that complaining was a character flaw. My mother, Catherine, was quiet, warm, observant. She ran the restaurant's books in the early years, handled the staff's scheduling, and smoothed over every rough edge my father created with his bluntness. Tyler was born in 1992, the firstborn son, the heir apparent. My father treated him like a prince from the day he could walk. Everything Tyler did was celebrated. His first words, his first Little League home run, his first A on a report card. Tyler was going to take over the restaurant someday. That was understood before he could spell his own name. Ryan came 2 years later in 1994. He was louder than Tyler, more physical, more like my father. By the time he was 10, he was already helping in the kitchen, and Frank loved it. "My boys," he would say at family gatherings, his arm around each of their shoulders, "they are the future of Mitchell's on Main." And then there was me. I was born on September 14th, 1996, the youngest by 2 years. The only girl, and from the very beginning, I existed in a different category than my brothers. I do not mean my parents were cruel to me, not overtly, not in ways that would make headlines or prompt calls to child services. The difference was subtler than that. It was in the way my father's eyes lit up when Tyler walked into a room but merely acknowledged my presence. It was in the way Ryan's baseball games were family events, but my school choir concerts were optional. It was in the casual assumption, never spoken aloud but always present, that my brothers were building towards something. And I was simply there. My mother noticed. I know she did because of the way she would squeeze my shoulder when my father talked about the boys at dinner. A quiet pressure that said, I see you. You matter. But she never said it out loud. Not then. I started working at Mitchell's on Main when I was 8 years old. I remember the exact day. Saturday, November 6th, 2004. My father was short-staffed because 2 servers had called in sick and a busboy had quit the night before. My mother was home with the flu. Tyler was 12 and already a regular presence at the restaurant. Ryan was 10 and followed Tyler everywhere. Nora, my father, said that morning, pulling on his jacket. You are coming with me today. I need hands. I was thrilled. At 8 years old, being invited to the restaurant felt like being invited into a secret world. The clattering kitchen, the sizzling grill, the hum of conversation from the dining room. I wanted to be part of it the way my brothers were. My first job was folding napkins. I sat at a back table with a stack of white cloth napkins and folded each one into a triangle, then tucked them into water glasses the way Tyler showed me. I folded 112 napkins that day. I counted. When the lunch rush hit, my father put me on water duty. I carried a plastic pitcher, almost as big as my torso, and refilled glasses at every table. My arms ached by 2 in the afternoon. I spilled water on a customer's lap and cried in the bathroom for 5 minutes before Tyler found me and told me it was fine. Everyone spills. Just go back out there. I went back out there. I always went back out there. By the time I was 10, I was clearing tables and running food. By 12, I was taking orders during slow periods. By 14, I could work any station in the restaurant. Front of house, prep kitchen, dessert line, dishwashing, hosting, and I did. Wherever there was a gap, I filled it. Whatever needed doing, I did it. I was 14 when I first noticed the difference. It was a Friday evening in August 2010. Tyler was 18, about to start college. Ryan was 16. We were all at the restaurant. The dinner rush had ended and my father was sitting at the bar doing end-of-night paperwork. Tyler walked over and my father handed him an envelope. Payday. Tyler. Good week. You earned it. Tyler opened the envelope and pulled out a check. I could not see the amount, but I watched Tyler smile and tuck it into his back pocket. Then my father handed Ryan an identical envelope. You are getting faster on the grill, Ryan. Keep it up. I waited. I had worked every shift that week, Monday through Friday, 3 hours after school each day, plus 8 hours on Saturday. 23 hours total. I had covered for a server who left early on Wednesday. I had mopped the entire kitchen floor on Thursday because the closing cook forgot. I stood by the bar, waiting for my envelope. My father looked at his paperwork, looked at me, then looked back at his paperwork. You can head home, Nora. Good work this week. No envelope. No check. No explanation. Dad? I said, what about me? What about you? My pay. For this week. He looked at me like I had asked him why the sky was blue. An obvious question with an obvious answer. Nora, this is a family business. Your brothers are employees. You are family. Family helps out. That is just how it works. But Tyler and Ryan are family too. They are different. They need to learn the value of $1. They will have families to support someday. What about me? Will I not have things to pay for? He turned back to his paperwork. We will talk about it later, Nora. Go help your mother with the dishes. We never talked about it later. Not that week, not that month, not that year, and not for the next 11 years after that. I wish I could tell you I stood up for myself at 14. That I demanded to be treated equally, that I walked out and refused to return until my father paid me what I was worth. I did not. I was 14. I loved the restaurant. I loved the feeling of a busy Friday night when every table was full and the kitchen was firing on all cylinders, and I was part of making it work. I loved the regulars, who knew my name, who asked about my day, who told my father, you have got a great kid here, Frank. My father would nod and say, she is a good helper, not employee, not colleague, not even worker. helper, like I was doing him a casual favor instead of showing up for 25 hours a week and performing the same labor my brothers were compensated for. The high school years were the hardest. My friends went to movies on Friday nights. They went to the shore on summer weekends. They had part-time jobs at clothing stores and ice cream shops that paid them minimum wage and gave them spending money for concerts and new shoes. I worked at Mitchell's on Main. Friday nights, Saturday mornings, Saturday nights, Sunday brunches, holiday weekends, summer days that started at 9 in the morning and ended at 10 at night. I missed the junior prom because we were short-staffed. I missed my best friend Alyssa's birthday party because my father needed me to cover a Saturday shift. I stopped being invited to things eventually. People stopped asking when the answer was always the same. Sorry, I have to work. Meanwhile, Tyler graduated from Rutgers with a business degree and came back to manage the restaurant's finances. His salary by then was $62,000 a year. He was 22. Ryan graduated from culinary school, came back to run the kitchen. His salary was $55,000 a year. He was 20. I was 18, working 40 hours a week at the restaurant, and I did not have enough money to buy myself a new pair of shoes. My mother bought them for me, quietly, without telling my father. She left them on my bed with a small note that said, "You deserve these." That was my mother. Small acts of love delivered in secret, like she was smuggling affection past a border guard. I graduated from Maplewood High School in 2014 with a 3.1 GPA. It would have been higher if I had not been working 30 hours a week at the restaurant during senior year. My guidance counselor, Mr. Padilla, called me into his office in April. "Nora, your grades are slipping." He leaned forward with genuine concern. "Are you working too much?" "I am helping at my family's restaurant." "How many hours a week?" I hesitated. 30. Sometimes more. He stared at me. "And they are paying you?" "No." My throat tightened. "It is family. We just help out." Mr. Padilla's expression changed. Something hardened behind his eyes. "Nora, that is not how it is supposed to work." But I did not know any different. This was my normal. This was the water I swam in. I did not know I was drowning until years later. I did not go to college. I could not afford it. My father told me college was unnecessary when I had a perfectly good career waiting for me at the restaurant. Career. He called it a career. An unpaid career. Tyler had his college paid for by my parents. So did Ryan. When I mentioned applying to community college, my father waved his hand dismissively. "Who is going to cover your shifts, Nora? We need you here." So I stayed. I stayed because I did not know where else to go. I stayed because the restaurant was the only thing I knew. And I stayed because some part of me, some stubborn, desperate, foolish part of me, still believed that if I worked hard enough, if I proved myself enough, my father would finally see me the way he saw my brothers. He never did, but someone else did. And she had been watching the whole time. My mother started getting sick in the spring of 2015. She was 53 years old. She had been tired for months, losing weight without trying, complaining of stomach pain she blamed on stress. I was the one who noticed. Not Tyler, not Ryan, not my father. Me. I noticed because I was the one who lived in the same house, who sat across from her at breakfast every morning, who saw the way her face had thinned and her color had changed from warm to gray. "Mom," I said one morning in April, "you need to see a doctor." "I am fine, Nora. Just tired." She was not fine. The doctor found a mass on her pancreas on May 7, 2015. Pancreatic cancer. Stage 3. The oncologist at Morristown Medical Center explained the prognosis with the careful neutrality of someone who delivers devastating news for a living. The 5-year survival rate for stage 3 pancreatic cancer is approximately 3 to 5%. My mother absorbed this information with the same quiet composure she brought to everything. She folded her hands, nodded once, and asked what the treatment options were. Tyler flew in from his apartment in Hoboken. Ryan came home from the restaurant. My father stood in the corner of the hospital room with his arms crossed, his jaw working, unable to look at anyone. For 3 weeks, the family was together, united in crisis. Then the crisis became routine, and one by one, they drifted back to their lives. Tyler returned to Hoboken. He called weekly for the first month, then bi-weekly, then monthly, then whenever he remembered. Ryan went back to the restaurant kitchen. He visited Mom on Sundays. Sometimes. My father handled the crisis the way he handled everything, by working. He was at the restaurant by 7 every morning and home by 11 every night. He hired a part-time nurse for 3 days a week and told me to handle the rest. Handle the rest, as if my mother's cancer was a scheduling problem. I was 19. I split my time between the restaurant and my mother's bedside. 6 in the morning, wake mom, give her the medications. 7 to 2, work at Mitchell's. 2:30 to 6, sit with mom, drive her to chemo appointments, hold the basin while she vomited afterward. 7 to 10, back at the restaurant for the dinner shift. 10:30, home, check on mom, collapse into bed. But something changed in my mother during that illness. Something sharpened. The woman who had spent 30 years being quiet, being accommodating, being the peacemaker, suddenly found an urgency she had never shown before. It started in September 2015. I came home from the restaurant to find her at the kitchen table with a stack of notebooks, the ones with the black and white marbled covers you can buy at any drugstore for $1. "What are you writing?" I asked. "Just keeping track of things." She closed the notebook casually. "Memories, stories, things I want to remember." I thought it was beautiful. A dying woman, preserving her life in words. I did not think to ask what kind of things she was tracking. What she was writing, what I would not discover until 8 years later, was this. Tuesday, September 15th, 2015. Nora worked 7 a.m. to 2 p.m. at the restaurant. Prep cook did not show. Nora covered the entire prep line alone. Frank did not thank her. Tyler's paycheck this week $412. Ryan's paycheck $389. Nora's paycheck $0. She was documenting my labor. Every shift, every hour, every task, every paycheck I never received compared against every paycheck my brothers did. And she was not just writing. In January 2016, 9 months before she died, she made a phone call that would change everything. She called Ruth Kimball. Ruth Kimball was a labor attorney with a small practice in Montclair, New Jersey, 12 miles from Maplewood. She specialized in wage theft cases, and she had a reputation for being thorough, relentless, and absolutely unwilling to let powerful people exploit vulnerable workers. My mother found her through a Google search on the family computer. I know this because Ruth told me later. Catherine called her, explained the situation, and asked a simple question. If a father refuses to pay his daughter for 17 years of work while paying his sons, is that legal? Ruth's answer was no, it was not legal. And it was not even close. Over the next 8 months, my mother met with Ruth Kimball 6 times. She did this while undergoing chemotherapy. She did this while her body was failing. She drove herself to those meetings on days when she could barely stand, because she did not want anyone to know. She gave Ruth the notebooks. She gave her restaurant schedule she had photocopied from my father's office. She gave her pay stubs she had collected from Tyler and Ryan's rooms over the years. She built a case file that was 214 pages long. And then she wrote a letter. One letter, addressed to me. She gave it to Ruth and said, "Do not give this to Nora unless Frank sells the restaurant without compensating her. If he does the right thing, destroy it. If he does not, she will need this." My mother died on October 11th, 2016, at 4:17 in the afternoon. I was holding her hand. The hospice nurse was adjusting her morphine drip. The autumn light was coming through the bedroom window, turning everything gold. Her last words to me were not dramatic. They were not a speech. She squeezed my hand, looked at me with those clear, knowing eyes, and whispered, "You are worth more than he knows, Nora. Do not forget that." I did not understand then. I thought she was talking about love. She was talking about something far more specific. The years after my mother's death were the loneliest of my life. The buffer was gone. The one person in that house who had seen me, who had acknowledged my existence as something more than a convenient source of free labor, was buried in the family plot at Maplewood Cemetery, next to my father's parents. My father did not change after Catherine died. He did not soften. He did not suddenly look at me and realize what he had been doing for 17 years. If anything, he got worse. Without my mother managing the schedule, I absorbed her responsibilities too. I was now working the equivalent of 2 full-time jobs, 40-plus hours a week at the restaurant, plus all the administrative tasks my mother used to handle, ordering supplies, managing vendor relationships, handling staff complaints, doing the scheduling that Tyler was supposed to do but frequently neglected because he was busy with his investment portfolio. Tyler's salary by 2018 was $85,000 a year. Ryan's was $72,000. They had both bought condominiums. Ryan had just leased a new pickup truck. I was 22 years old, living in my childhood bedroom, wearing clothes I had owned since high school, and I did not have a savings account because I had nothing to save. I asked my father one more time. It was a Tuesday evening in March 2019. The restaurant had just closed after a particularly brutal dinner rush. I had covered for 2 missing servers, run food, bussed tables, and cleaned the kitchen because the closing crew left early. My feet hurt. My back ached. I smelled like fryer oil and bleach. Dad. I sat across from him at the bar while he counted the register. Can we talk about compensation? He did not look up. Compensation for what? For my work. Here, at the restaurant. I have been working here for 15 years. He sighed, the kind of sigh that made me feel like I was 6 years old, asking for a toy at the grocery store. Nora, we have been over this. You live in my house rent-free. You eat at the restaurant for free. You have a roof over your head and food on your table. What more do you need? A paycheck, like Tyler and Ryan get. Tyler and Ryan have expenses, mortgages, car payments, professional obligations. You do not have those kinds of responsibilities, because I cannot afford them, because you do not pay me. Because you do not pay me. He looked at me then, really looked at me, and what I saw in his eyes was not guilt or recognition, or even annoyance. It was confusion, genuine confusion. Like the idea of paying his daughter for her labor was so foreign to him that he could not process it. You are my daughter, Nora. This is your family. Why are you trying to make this into something it is not? I left the bar. I went upstairs. I sat on my bed and stared at the wall and thought about what Mr. Padilla had said to me 4 years earlier in his office at Maplewood High. Nora, that is not how it is supposed to work. On January 4th, 2021, I walked out of Mitchell's on Main for the last time as a worker. I was 25 years old. I did not give 2 weeks' notice. I did not have a plan. I had $412 in a checking account my mother had helped me open when I was 16. That was everything I had to show for 17 years of labor. My father's response when I told him I was leaving was, "Where would you even go?" As if the world outside that restaurant did not exist. As if I was not capable of surviving without the kitchen that had consumed my entire youth. I rented a room in a shared apartment in East Orange, $350 a month. I slept on an air mattress for the first 2 months, until I could afford a used bed frame from a thrift store. I started cooking, not for my father, for myself. I made meals for my roommates, then for their friends, then for their friends' coworkers. Someone asked if I could cater a birthday party, then a baby shower, then a corporate lunch. By March 2021, I had printed business cards on my roommate's printer, Nora's Kitchen, catering and private dining, phone number, email. By December, I had made $47,000 in my first year, not much by most standards, more than I had ever earned in my entire life. By 2023, Nora's Kitchen was doing $112,000 in annual revenue. I had a commercial kitchen rental, a used delivery van, and 3 part-time employees. I was 27 years old, and for the first time in my life, every dollar I earned belonged to me. Then in August 2024, I got a phone call from Tyler's wife, Jessica. It was a Saturday afternoon. I was prepping for a Sunday wedding reception. "Hey, Nora," she said casually. "Are you coming to the family meeting next week? About the restaurant sale?" "The what?" Long pause. "Oh, I thought you knew. Your dad is selling Mitchell's. Some developer offered $4.2 million for the building and the land. Tyler and Ryan have been talking about it for weeks." I hung up. My hands were shaking. I called my father. "Is it true you are selling the restaurant? Who told you that?" Tyler's wife. "Is it true?" A pause. "Yes, it is true. We have a buyer. Closing is in October. And what about me? What about you? Am I included in the sale? In the proceeds? After everything I gave to that place?" My father's voice was flat, patient. The tone he used when explaining something obvious to someone he considered slow. "Nora, you left the restaurant 3 years ago. Tyler and Ryan have been running it. This is between me and the boys. You will always be welcome to visit, of course. Visit the restaurant I had given 17 years of my life to, and he was offering me visiting privileges." I hung up. I sat in my commercial kitchen surrounded by the ingredients for a wedding cake, and I cried for 20 minutes. Then my phone rang again, a number I did not recognize, a 201 area code. Northern New Jersey. Is this Nora Mitchell? The voice was calm, professional, and female. It carried the measured quality of someone who chose every word carefully. Yes. Who is this? My name is Ruth Kimball. I am an attorney in Montclair. I was your mother's lawyer. The world stopped. I drove to Ruth Kimball's office on a Thursday morning. Her practice was on the second floor of a converted Victorian house on Bloomfield Avenue in Montclair. The waiting room had hardwood floors and framed newspaper clippings on the walls. Headlines about wage theft cases she had won. One from the Bergen Record read, Montclair attorney wins $1.4 million judgment for restaurant workers. Ruth was in her late 50s, silver-streaked hair pulled back in a low bun, reading glasses hanging from a beaded chain around her neck. She had the demeanor of a woman who had spent 3 decades in courtrooms and had long since stopped being impressed or intimidated by anyone. She shook my hand and led me into her office, closed the door, sat across from me at a desk covered in neatly organized files. I have been waiting 8 years to make this call, she said. 8 years? Your mother first contacted me on January 12, 2016, 9 months before she passed. She drove to this office 6 times between January and August of that year. She was undergoing chemotherapy during most of those visits. Twice she had to pause our meetings because she was too nauseated to continue. She came back both times. Ruth opened a drawer and placed a thick accordion file on the desk, the kind with multiple sections separated by labeled tabs. This is what your mother built. She opened the first tab. Inside were photocopies of the restaurant's weekly schedules dating back to 2004. My name appeared on every single one, highlighted in yellow. Second tab. Pay stubs. Tyler's and Ryan's, collected over years, each one annotated in my mother's handwriting with the corresponding dates and hours I had worked during the same period. Third tab. The notebooks. Not 1, not 5, 14 marbled composition notebooks, each one filled front to back with entries in my mother's careful handwriting. March 7th, 2012, Nora worked 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. 16 hours, covered for absent line cook and dishwasher. Tyler left early for a dentist appointment. Ryan did not come in. Frank told Nora she did a great job, but did not offer compensation. Tyler received his regular bi-weekly check of $840. Every entry followed the same format. Date, my hours, my tasks, my brother's pay. My pay, which was always the same word, 0. 14 notebooks, spanning 6 years, 2010 through 2016. How did she get all of this? My voice was barely a whisper. She was meticulous, Ruth said. She photocopied schedules from your father's office when he was not looking. She collected your brother's pay stubs from the household trash. She cross-referenced everything with bank statements she had access to as a joint account holder. Ruth pulled out a legal-sized document, several pages, densely typed. Based on your mother's documentation and my calculations using New Jersey Department of Labor wage rates, here's what you are owed. She turned the document to face me. The first number was labeled Base Unpaid Wages, 2004 through 2021, $389,412. Below that, mandatory overtime, unpaid, $147,208. Below that, New Jersey Wage Theft Act, treble damages for willful non-payment. The number tripled. Below that, statutory interest calculated at 10% annually. At the bottom of the page, circled in red ink, was the total. $1.2 million. I stared at the number. $1.2 million. For 17 years of showing up every day, of giving everything I had, of being told it was my duty, my obligation, my privilege, to work for free while my brothers deposited paychecks every 2 weeks. Ruth let the silence sit. Your mother wanted me to be clear about something, she said. She reached into the file and pulled out an envelope, cream-colored, my mother's handwriting on the front. For Nora, when she is ready. She handed it to me. My hands were shaking. I opened it. My dearest Nora, if you are reading this, then your father has done exactly what I always feared he would. He has sold the restaurant and forgotten that you built it as much as anyone. Maybe more. I should have said something while I was alive. I should have stood in that kitchen and told him that what he was doing to you was wrong. That paying your brothers and not paying you was not tradition or family values. It was theft. But I was afraid. I was afraid of his temper, of losing my marriage, of disrupting the only life I knew how to live. That is my shame, Nora, and I will carry it wherever I am now. But I could not leave this world without giving you something to fight with. The notebooks are real. The schedules are real. The numbers are real. Ruth will explain everything. You deserved to be paid, Nora. You deserved to be seen. You deserved to be treated like you mattered. Your father's failure to do that does not change your worth. It reveals his. I am so proud of you. I have always been so proud of you. All my love, Mom. I set the letter down. My face was wet. I had not realized I was crying. Ruth handed me a tissue and waited. What do you want to do, Nora? I looked at the file, at the notebooks filled with my mother's handwriting, at the pay stubs she had fished from the trash, at the schedules she had copied in secret while fighting cancer, at the letter she had written knowing she would not live to see me read it. My mother had spent the last year of her life building a fortress around me, not because she wanted justice, because she wanted to make sure that when the moment came, when my father finally showed me exactly who he was, I would not be empty-handed. What happens next? I asked. Ruth folded her hands. That depends on you. We can file a formal wage theft claim with the New Jersey Department of Labor. We can also file a civil lawsuit. Given the documentation your mother provided, I am confident we will prevail. She paused. But I should warn you, this will be public. Your father will fight it. Your brothers will likely side with him. It will be ugly. I thought about the restaurant, about the kitchen where I had spent 17 years of my life, about the customers who knew my name, about the recipes I had created that were still on the menu, about my father standing at the bar handing envelopes to Tyler and Ryan while I stood there waiting for one that never came. I am not afraid of ugly, I said. I have been living in ugly my whole life. Ruth smiled. Your mother said you would say something like that. Before we continue, I want to pause and ask you something. Have you ever worked for someone who refused to see your value? Who took everything you had and called it a favor? Who paid everyone around you while telling you that your contribution did not count? I want to hear your story. Drop it in the comments below, because you are not alone. And if you want to see what happened when I walked into that restaurant on its last night, when my father gave his farewell speech to 150 people and never mentioned my name, and what happened when I took the microphone from his hands, hit subscribe and keep watching, because what came next shook that room to its foundation, and even I did not see it coming. The next 6 weeks were a blur of preparation. Ruth Kimball worked with the precision of a surgeon. Every document my mother had collected was organized, cross-referenced, and cataloged into a legal file that grew thicker by the day. We had 14 notebooks spanning 6 years of detailed entries. We had photocopied restaurant schedules going back to 2004. We had Tyler and Ryan's pay stubs annotated with corresponding dates and hours I had worked. We had bank statements showing regular payments to my brothers and 0 payments to me. We had tax records from the restaurant showing labor costs that never included my name, even though I appeared on every weekly schedule. Ruth also subpoenaed additional records, payroll filings with the Internal Revenue Service, workers' compensation insurance documents that listed Tyler and Ryan as employees but never mentioned me, unemployment insurance records, Social Security contribution statements. The picture those records painted was damning. For 17 years, Frank Mitchell had employed his daughter full-time in his restaurant without paying her a single dollar, without filing any payroll taxes on her behalf, without contributing to her Social Security, without providing workers' compensation coverage, without even acknowledging her existence as a worker in any official document. On paper, Nora Mitchell had never worked at Mitchell's on Main. On paper, she did not exist. But my mother's notebook said otherwise. And so did a dozen former employees Ruth tracked down through old staff lists. Maria Gutierrez, a line cook who had worked at Mitchell's from 2008 to 2014, provided a sworn affidavit. Nora was there every day. She worked harder than anyone. I always wondered why Frank never paid her. One time I asked him about it, and he said it was a family arrangement. I thought it was wrong, but it was not my place to say anything. Derek Halpern, a server from 2012 to 2017, said, Nora ran the front of house better than any manager I have ever worked with. She trained new servers. She handled customer complaints. She covered shifts nobody else would take. I assumed she was salaried. I had no idea she was working for free. Janet Cooley, the restaurant's bookkeeper from 2006 to 2013, provided the most damaging testimony. Frank explicitly told me never to add Nora to the payroll system. I asked him about it once and he said she is family and family does not go on the books. I should have said something. I should have reported it. I did not, and I regret that. 8 former employees in total provided statements. Every single one confirmed the same thing. Nora Mitchell worked at that restaurant full-time for years without compensation. Ruth filed the wage theft claim with the New Jersey Department of Labor on September 15, 2024. She simultaneously filed a civil lawsuit in Essex County Superior Court. Mitchell v. Mitchell. Case number ESX L472924. The complaint alleged willful wage theft, violation of the New Jersey wage payment law, violation of the New Jersey wage and hour law, failure to pay minimum wage, failure to pay overtime, and unjust enrichment. The total damages sought, including treble damages under the New Jersey Wage Theft Act, and statutory interest were $1.2 million. My father was served on September 18th at the restaurant. I know this because Tyler called me 45 minutes later. His voice was a frequency I had never heard from him before. High, tight, vibrating with something between fury and fear. What did you do, Nora? I filed a wage claim. A wage claim? You are suing Dad? You are suing the family. I am suing my employer, the man who made me work for 17 years without paying me. This is insane. You lived in his house, you ate for free, you had everything you needed, everything except a paycheck, everything except the basic dignity of being paid for my work. The same dignity you received every 2 weeks since you were 16. Tyler hung up. Ryan called an hour later, less angry, more bewildered, like he genuinely could not comprehend what was happening. Nora, I do not understand. Dad always said you did not need to be paid because you were taken care of. Were you taken care of, Ryan? What do you mean? You got paid? You bought a condo? You leased a truck? You have a retirement account? You built a life with the money Dad paid you for working at the restaurant. I worked the same hours, more hours, and I have nothing. Silence. He never responded. He just said, I will talk to Dad, and hung up. The sale of the restaurant was supposed to close on October 15, 2024. Ruth filed an emergency motion to freeze the sale proceeds pending resolution of the wage theft claim. The court granted a temporary restraining order on October 3rd. My father's lawyer, a man named Vincent Rossi from a firm in Newark, filed an opposition within 48 hours. He argued that I had been a family member helping with the family business, not an employee. That I had received in-kind compensation in the form of housing and meals. That the statute of limitations had expired on most of the claims. Ruth demolished every argument in her response brief. She cited the New Jersey Wage Theft Act of 2019, which extended the statute of limitations for wage theft claims to 6 years and allowed treble damages for willful violations. She cited the fact that the ongoing nature of the theft created a continuing violation that told the limitations period. She cited my mother's documentation as contemporaneous evidence of the employment relationship. And she cited something else. A text message my father had sent Tyler in 2020, 3 months before I left the restaurant. Tyler had apparently asked about adding me to the payroll because a new accountant had questioned why a full-time worker was not in the system. My father's reply was, 7 words. Do not worry about Nora. She is fine. 7 words. 17 years of my life dismissed in 7 words. The court denied Vincent Rossi's motion to dissolve the restraining order. The sale proceeds, all $4.2 million, remained frozen. And then my father did something I did not expect. He announced that the restaurant's final night of service would be October 26, 2024. A farewell dinner, 150 guests, a celebration of 35 years of Mitchell's on Main. He invited Tyler, he invited Ryan, he invited former employees, loyal customers, local politicians, the food critic from the Star-Ledger who had written that famous review in 1996. He did not invite me. I found out from the Maplewood Community Facebook page, where the event was posted as a public invitation. The post read, Join Frank Mitchell and family for one final evening at Mitchell's on Main. 35 years of memories. 35 years of community. Come raise a glass to the restaurant that fed Maplewood. The comments were filled with heart emojis and nostalgic memories. Several people mentioned my name. Will Nora be there? She was always my favorite. I remember when Nora used to bring out the desserts. She always remembered my daughter's birthday. Nora Mitchell made that restaurant. Hope she will be there. My father did not respond to any of those comments. Ruth called me. Are you going? I stared at the Facebook post, at the photo of the restaurant's storefront that my father had used as the cover image. I could see the window where I used to sit folding napkins when I was 8 years old. Yes, I said. I am going. She paused. What are you planning? The truth. That is all I have ever wanted, for someone to tell the truth about what happened in that restaurant. Ruth was quiet for a long moment. Your mother would want you to be careful, but she would also want you to be heard. I know. Then I have something that might help. She told me about the recordings, not the notebooks, something else, something my mother had made during her final weeks. 3 audio recordings, her voice, her words, her testimony. Recorded in August 2016, 2 months before she died, when her voice was weak, but her mind was absolute steel. She had sat in Ruth's office with a microphone and spoken for 47 minutes. She told the truth about everything. Saturday, October 26th, 2024, 6:30 in the evening, Mitchell's on Main. The restaurant looked exactly the way I remembered it. The wooden sign above the door with the chipped paint on the M. The chalkboard in the window listing the daily specials in my father's blocky handwriting. The brass bell above the entrance that rang every time someone walked in. I had heard that bell 10,000 times, maybe more. 150 guests filled the dining room and spilled onto the sidewalk patio that my father had added in 2012, the patio I had helped build on a weekend in June, hauling lumber and mixing concrete while Tyler supervised from a lawn chair and Ryan was at a friend's bachelor party. I stood across the street watching the warm light pour from the windows. I could hear laughter and music, the clinking of glasses, the hum of a community celebrating a place that had been part of their lives for 35 years. My phone buzzed. A text from Ruth. I am parked around the corner. The audio files are on a USB drive in your bag. The Bluetooth speaker is tested and ready. Whatever you decide, I am here. I took a breath, crossed the street, pushed open the door. The brass bell rang. For a moment, nobody noticed me. The room was too full, too alive, too wrapped up in the golden nostalgia of Mitchell's final night. Then, a woman near the door turned and her face broke into a wide smile. Nora. Oh my God, Nora Mitchell. You are here. It was Mrs. Hartigan. She had been a regular every Wednesday night for 20 years. I had memorized her order. Pot roast, mashed potatoes, extra gravy, iced tea with 2 lemons. Heads began to turn. The whispers started. Quiet at first, then building. Is that Nora? Oh, she came. I am so glad. Nora. Over here. People reached for me as I moved through the room. Hands on my shoulders. Hugs from regulars I had not seen in 3 years. Faces I recognized from 1,000 dinner rushes, from 1,000 late nights, from a lifetime spent in that building. And then, my father saw me. He was standing at the bar, the same spot where he used to count the register every night. Tyler was beside him. Ryan was across the room near the kitchen door. My father's face went through 3 expressions in rapid succession. Surprise, irritation, and then something carefully neutral, the mask he wore when he did not want anyone to know what he was thinking. Nora. His voice carried across the room. I did not realize you were coming. I was not invited, but I have been part of this restaurant for 17 years. I thought I should be here for the last night. He stared at me for a long moment. Then he turned back to the bar. Help yourself to a drink if you want. Help yourself. Not welcome home. Not glad you are here. Not I am sorry I did not invite you. Help yourself. I found a spot near the back wall, the same section where I used to set up for large parties, pushing tables together, laying out extra silverware, making sure every glass was polished. I could do it in my sleep. Some nights I probably had. At 7:45, my father stepped onto the small raised platform near the kitchen where the staff used to gather for pre-shift meetings. Someone had set up a microphone. The room quieted. 35 years. My father's voice was thick with emotion. Not the manufactured kind, real emotion. the kind that surprised me because I had so rarely seen it from him. 35 years ago, Catherine and I opened these doors with nothing but a dream and a recipe for brisket. The crowd laughed. Someone said, and what a brisket it was. We built this place from the ground up. Every table, every chair, every recipe. This restaurant is not just a business, it is a legacy, and I am proud that my sons Tyler and Ryan helped carry that legacy forward. He raised his glass toward my brothers. Tyler stood straighter. Ryan nodded. The crowd applauded. To Mitchell's on Main. My father lifted his drink. And to the family that built it. Everyone drank. 150 people raising glasses in tribute to a legacy my father had just described, without mentioning my name. Not once. I waited. I counted to 10. Then I stood. Dad. My voice was louder than I expected. Can I say something? The room shifted. My father's glass froze halfway to his lips. Tyler's eyes went wide. Ryan's hand gripped the back of a chair. My father forced a smile. The kind of smile that said, "Do not make a scene." "Sure, Nora. Come on up." I walked to the platform. 150 faces watched me. Former neighbors, customers I had served for years. People who knew my name, who had watched me grow up behind that counter, who had no idea what my father had done. I took the microphone. "Thank you, Dad, for letting me say a few words." I looked out at the crowd. For those of you who do not know me, I am Nora Mitchell, Frank's youngest child, his only daughter. I worked in this restaurant from the time I was 8 years old until I was 25. Some of you remember me. You remember me folding napkins, running food, bussing tables, covering shifts. Some of you remember me closing this restaurant alone on school nights. Some of you remember seeing me here on Christmas Eve, on Thanksgiving morning, on my own birthday. Nods across the room. Mrs. Hartigan was already wiping her eyes. What most of you do not know is that in 17 years of working in this restaurant, I was never paid. Not once. Not a single dollar. The silence was absolute. The kind of silence where you can hear the ice settling in glasses. My brothers Tyler and Ryan received full salaries from the time they were 16. Raises every year. Bonuses. Profit sharing. My father paid them because they were employees. He did not pay me because I was, and I am quoting him, family. I heard someone inhale sharply. I saw Tyler take a step forward. My father put a hand on his arm and stopped him. When I asked to be compensated, I was told I should be grateful. When I asked why my brothers were paid, and I was not, I was told they had responsibilities, and I did not. When I asked for help paying for college, I was told the restaurant needed me more than I needed a degree. My voice stayed level. I had practiced this, not the words, the calm, the control, the refusal to let emotion undermine fact. I am not here tonight to cause pain. I am here because this restaurant is closing after 35 years, and my father just gave a speech about the family that built it, without saying my name. I reached into my bag and pulled out one of the marble composition notebooks. This is one of 14 notebooks my mother, Catherine Mitchell, kept during the last 6 years of her life. In it, she documented every shift I worked, every hour I put in, every paycheck I never received. She did this while undergoing chemotherapy for pancreatic cancer. She drove herself to a lawyer's office 6 times in 9 months because she wanted to make sure that when this moment came, there would be evidence. I held the notebook up for the room to see. My mother saw what was happening. She saw that her daughter was being used, and she spent the last year of her life making sure I would have the proof to do something about it. "Nora, that is enough." My father's voice was controlled, hard, the voice he used when suppliers tried to overcharge him. "This is not the time or the place." "When was the time, Dad?" I turned to face him. "When I was 8, and you put me to work? When I was 14 and I watched you hand envelopes to Tyler and Ryan and walk past me? When I was 19 and I asked you for a paycheck and you told me I was family? When was the right time to talk about this?" He had no answer. Then I pulled out my phone, connected it to the small Bluetooth speaker I had placed on the platform earlier, and pressed play. My mother's voice filled the restaurant. Thin, tired, the voice of a woman who was dying and knew it, but steady. Absolutely steady. "My name is Catherine Ann Mitchell. I am recording this on August 4th, 2016, in the office of my attorney, Ruth Kimball. I am making this recording because I need someone to hear the truth about what has happened to my daughter." The room went completely still. For 17 years, my husband Frank has required our daughter Nora to work in his restaurant without compensation. She began working at age 8 and continues to work full-time. She has never received a paycheck, a bonus, or any formal acknowledgement of her labor. During the same period, our sons Tyler and Ryan have received full salaries and benefits. I heard a woman at a nearby table whisper, "Oh my God." My mother's voice continued, "I did not stop this when I should have. I was afraid of my husband's temper, afraid of disrupting our family, afraid of the consequences. That fear was wrong, and I own it. But I will not let my silence follow me to my grave." A pause in the recording. I could hear my mother breathing. Each breath was an effort. Nora is not a helper. She is not a volunteer. She is a worker who has been denied the basic right of being paid for her labor. What Frank has done is not a family tradition. It is wage theft. And I have documented every hour, every shift, every dollar she was denied. Another pause, longer this time. If you are hearing this, Nora, I want you to know something. You are not worthless. You are not less than your brothers. You are the strongest person I have ever known. And I am sorry I did not tell you that every single day of your life. The recording ended. The silence that followed was the loudest thing I had ever heard. The restaurant erupted. Not into chaos exactly, into something more complicated. Whispers that became conversations that became arguments. People standing up from tables, people pulling out phones, people looking at my father with expressions I had never seen directed at him before. Mrs. Hartigan was crying openly. Derek Halpern, the former server who had provided an affidavit, was standing near the kitchen door with his arms crossed, nodding slowly like a man watching something he had always known would eventually happen. My father stood frozen on the platform. The microphone hung at his side. His face had gone the color of old newspaper. Tyler was whispering furiously in his ear. Ryan had backed away and was leaning against the wall with his hands covering his face. Frank, a man near the front, stood up. Dennis Callahan. He had been a regular for 22 years. Every Friday night, burger medium rare, onion rings, draft beer. His son had played Little League with Tyler. Is this true? Did you really not pay her? My father opened his mouth, closed it, opened it again. It is not as simple as she is making it sound. His voice was strained. Nora was family. She lived in my house. She ate at my table. I provided for her in every way a father should, except a paycheck. Dennis's voice was flat. My daughter works at my accounting firm. I pay her, because that is what you do when someone works for you, Frank, family or not. Another voice from the crowd. A woman I did not recognize. You paid your sons, though, right? She is saying you paid your boys and not her. Is that true? My father looked at Tyler. Tyler looked at the floor. It was a different situation, my father said. How? The woman pressed. How was it different? Because there was no answer. There was no explanation that would make paying 2 children and not the third sound like anything other than what it was. Nora. Tyler stepped forward. His voice was tight. Can we talk about this privately? This is not. He looked around the room at 150 people staring at him. This is a family matter. It stopped being a family matter when Dad filed payroll taxes for you and Ryan and left me off the books for 17 years. I kept my voice steady. It became a legal matter. And it became a public matter the moment Dad gave a farewell speech about the family that built this restaurant, without mentioning my name. The rest of the evening unraveled quickly. 43 guests left within 20 minutes. I counted. Some left quietly. Some stopped to hug me on their way out. Mrs. Hartigan held both my hands and said, "Your mother was right about you, sweetheart. She was always right about you." Dennis Callahan shook my hand at the door. "You did the right thing, Nora. Your father will not see it that way. But you did the right thing." The food critic from the Star-Ledger, a woman named Patricia Dunn who had written the famous review 28 years earlier, approached me outside. "Nora, I reviewed this restaurant in 1996. I called it the best family restaurant in Essex County." She paused. "I think I need to write a different story now. Would you be willing to talk to me?" I gave her Ruth's card. By midnight, the restaurant was empty. The lights were off. The chairs were stacked on the tables the way I had stacked them 1,000 times before. The kitchen was clean. The grill was cold. I stood on the sidewalk looking through the window at the dining room where I had spent my entire youth. That brass bell above the door. Those wooden floors I had mopped so many times I could navigate them blindfolded. That corner booth where I used to sit after closing, eating leftover bread and doing homework by the light of the exit sign. 17 years. No paycheck, no thank you. No acknowledgement that I had given everything I had to a place that gave me nothing in return except the calluses on my hands and the ache in my back. My phone buzzed. A text from Ruth. How are you? I am standing outside the restaurant. It is closed for the last time. How does it feel? I thought about it, like the end of something that should have ended a long time ago. The hearing was scheduled for December 4th, 2024. Essex County Superior Court. Judge Teresa Calloway presiding. Ruth and I spent 6 weeks preparing. We organized my mother's 14 notebooks into chronological order. We compiled the employee affidavits. We prepared the audio recordings. We calculated the damages down to the last dollar. $389,412 in base unpaid wages. $147,208 in mandatory overtime. Treble damages under the New Jersey Wage Theft Act for willful violation. Statutory interest at 10% per annum. $1.2 million. My father's attorney, Vincent Rossi, filed a motion to dismiss. He argued that I was never an employee, but rather a family member who voluntarily contributed to the household enterprise. He argued that my in-kind compensation, housing, and meals offset any obligation. He argued that the statute of limitations barred most of the claims. Judge Calloway denied the motion in its entirety. Her written opinion included a line that Ruth read to me 3 times. The fact that the plaintiff is the defendant's daughter does not exempt the defendant from the wage and hour laws of the state of New Jersey. If anything, the familial relationship makes the exploitation more egregious, not less. The hearing itself lasted 2 days. Day 1 was Ruth's case. She called 3 former employees as witnesses. She introduced the notebooks, the schedules, the pay stubs, the tax records. She played all 3 of my mother's audio recordings. When my mother's voice filled the courtroom, something shifted. Judge Calloway, who had maintained a neutral expression throughout the proceedings, removed her glasses and pressed her fingers to the bridge of her nose. The court reporter stopped typing and just listened. The gallery, which included 12 spectators and 2 reporters from local newspapers, went silent. My mother's voice, thin and tired and unbreakable, laid out 17 years of injustice in 4. My mother's voice, thin and tired and unbreakable, laid out 17 years of injustice in 47 minutes of testimony from beyond the grave. Day 2 was Vincent Rossi's defense. He called my father as his only witness. Mr. Mitchell, Rossi began, can you describe your relationship with your daughter, Nora? She is my daughter. My father's voice was flat, rehearsed. She grew up in my home. She was part of the family business. And did you compensate her for her contributions to the business? She received room and board, meals, a roof over her head, everything a parent provides. Ruth's cross-examination lasted 90 minutes. Mr. Mitchell, you paid your sons Tyler and Ryan for their work at the restaurant. Is that correct? Yes. Starting at what age? 16. And they also lived in your home during their early years of employment. Is that correct? So they received room and board and a salary. Yes. Why did Nora not receive the same? Long pause. Mr. Mitchell? It was different. How was it different? She is my daughter. Tyler is your son. Ryan is your son. They are your children. You paid them. Another pause. Longer this time. She did not need the money. My father's voice had lost its rehearsed quality. She was taken care of. Ruth held up a printout, a screenshot of my bank account from 2021, the year I left the restaurant. Your daughter left your restaurant after 17 years of full-time work with a bank balance of $412. Does that constitute being taken care of? My father said nothing. Ruth held up Tyler's bank statement from the same year. Subpoenaed during discovery. Your son Tyler, who worked at the restaurant for the same period, had a net worth of approximately $370,000 at the time your daughter left. Does that seem equitable to you? My father said nothing. Ruth set down the documents. One more question, Mr. Mitchell. In 2020, your son Tyler asked about adding Nora to the payroll. Your response by text message was, and I quote, "Do not worry about Nora. She is fine." She looked at him. Was she fine, Mr. Mitchell? The courtroom was silent. My father looked at me then. Not at his lawyer, not at the judge, at me. And for the first time in my life, I saw something in his eyes that was not dismissal. It was not anger. It was not confusion. It was the look of a man who was finally hearing what he had done, played back to him in a room where he could not change the subject, walk away, or tell me to go back to work. He did not answer Ruth's question. Judge Calloway adjourned for deliberation. The ruling came on December 20th, 2024. Ruth called me at 9:14 in the morning. We won, Nora. I was standing in my commercial kitchen. A batch of rosemary focaccia was rising on the counter. My hands were covered in flour. The morning sun was coming through the window and everything smelled like bread and possibility. Judge Calloway ruled in our favor on all counts: willful wage theft, violation of the New Jersey wage payment law, violation of the New Jersey wage and hour law, failure to pay minimum wage, failure to pay overtime, unjust enrichment. The damages. Ruth's voice was steady, but I could hear something underneath it, something that sounded like triumph, like vindication, like a promise kept to a dead woman who had spent her last year of life making sure this moment would come. $389,412 in base unpaid wages, $147,208 in unpaid overtime. Treble damages for willful violation of the Wage Theft Act, $1,858,000 plus statutory interest. Total judgment, $1.9 million. Ruth paused. The judgment will be satisfied from the frozen proceeds of the restaurant sale. Your father will receive the remainder after the judgment and legal fees are paid. I sat down on the kitchen floor. My legs simply refused to hold me up. $1.9 million. For 17 years of labor my father had called a family obligation. For 17 years of showing up, of giving everything, of being told I should be grateful for the privilege of working for free. The Star-Ledger ran the story the next day. Father ordered to pay $1.9 million to daughter for 17 years of unpaid restaurant work. The article detailed the case, quoted Judge Calloway's ruling, and included a line from my mother's audio testimony that the reporter called one of the most powerful pieces of evidence she had ever encountered in a wage theft case. The story was picked up by the Associated Press, then by the New York Times Metro section, then by national outlets. Within a week, my mother's voice, recorded in a lawyer's office while she was dying of cancer, had been heard by millions of people. The comments section under every article was a flood. This is every family business that exploits its own children. Her mother is a hero, building that case while fighting cancer. $1.9 million is not enough. 17 years of someone's life is priceless. My father filed an appeal on January 6, 2025. Vincent Rossi argued that the damages were excessive and that the court had failed to properly account for in-kind compensation. The appellate court denied the appeal in March. The three-judge panel wrote, "The defendant's assertion that room and board constituted fair compensation for 17 years of full-time labor is not supported by the record or by any reasonable interpretation of New Jersey wage law." The money was transferred to my account on April 3, 2025. I sat at my kitchen table and stared at the number on my phone screen for a very long time. Then I called Ruth. "It is here. How do you feel?" I thought about it. Not rich. Not victorious. I feel like my mother can rest now. Ruth was quiet for a moment. She can. The family fallout was exactly what Ruth had warned me about. My father stopped speaking to me entirely. Tyler sent one text, "You destroyed this family." I did not respond. Ryan called once, not to apologize, not to reconcile, to ask if I would consider settling privately so the public judgment would be vacated and the family's reputation could be salvaged. The family's reputation. Even now, even after everything, reputation was what mattered most. I said no. But something unexpected happened in the months that followed. Former employees of Mitchell's on Main started reaching out to me. Not about the lawsuit. About food. About my catering business. Patricia Dunn, the Star-Ledger food critic, wrote a piece about Nora's kitchen in February 2025. The headline read, "The daughter who was never paid just opened the best kitchen in Essex County." She wrote, "Nora Mitchell's food carries the memory of the restaurant where she grew up. The same techniques, the same care, the same devotion to feeding people well. The difference is that now every dollar her kitchen earns belongs to her, as it always should have." The article brought in more business than I could handle. I hired 4 more staff members. I moved out of the shared commercial kitchen into my own space, a converted warehouse in Maplewood, 3 blocks from where Mitchell's on Main used to be. I named the new kitchen Catherine's, after my mother. On the wall behind the counter, I hung a framed copy of one of her notebook entries, the one from March 7, 2012. Nora worked 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. and 4 p.m. to 10 p.m. 16 hours. Frank did not thank her. Tyler's paycheck this week $412. Ryan's paycheck $380. Nora's paycheck $0. Beneath it, I added a small brass plaque for Mom, who counted when no one else did. On Mother's Day 2025, I drove to Maplewood Cemetery. I sat beside my mother's headstone for an hour. The spring grass was soft, the birds were loud, the air smelled like cut lawn and wildflowers. I told her about the business, about the judgment, about the article, about the kitchen that bore her name. Then I pulled out the letter she had written me, the one Ruth had kept in her office for 8 years, waiting for the moment my father showed me exactly who he was. I read it aloud, every word. My dearest Nora, if you are reading this, then your father has done exactly what I always feared he would. Her words floated into the spring air, mixing with the birdsong in the wind. You deserve to be paid, Nora. You deserve to be seen. You deserve to be treated like you mattered. Your father's failure to do that does not change your worth. It reveals his. I folded the letter and pressed it against my chest. You were right, Mom. About all of it. And I am okay now. I am really okay. Tyler's wife, Jessica, called me in June. Not Tyler, Jessica. She wanted to meet for coffee. I said yes. We sat in a cafe in Montclair and she told me things Tyler would never say himself. He knows he was wrong. He cannot admit it yet. But he knows. That is not enough, I said. Knowing is not the same as saying it. I know. She stirred her coffee, but he is in therapy. For the first time in his life, the lawsuit shook something loose in him. Not just the money. Hearing your mother's voice in that courtroom, she paused. He cried in the car afterward. He has never cried in front of me before. I did not know what to do with that information, so I just held it. Ryan showed up at Catherine's kitchen unannounced in July. He stood in the doorway for a long time before I noticed him. When I looked up, he was holding a check. This is not from the judgment, he said. This is from me. My share of what Dad paid me while you got nothing. I went back through the records. This is what I calculated. He set the check on the counter, $47,800. I stared at it. I know it is not enough, he said. But I wanted you to know that I see it now. What happened? What Dad did, what I benefited from. He looked around the kitchen. This place is beautiful, Nora. He left before I could respond. I did not cash the check for 3 weeks. When I finally did, I donated the entire amount to a nonprofit that provides legal services to workers experiencing wage theft. My father and I have not spoken. I do not know if we ever will. Some wounds are too deep for words. Some silences say more than any conversation could. But I am not waiting for him to change. I am not waiting for an apology or an acknowledgement or a moment of reckoning that may never come. I spent 17 years waiting for my father to see me. I am done waiting. If you are still listening, let me leave you with this. My mother spent the last year of her life building something she would never see completed. Not a business, not a building, a case, a fortress of truth designed to protect the daughter she could not protect while she was alive. She did it while dying. She did it while afraid. She did it while knowing she would never hear the verdict, never see the judgment, never watch me stand in that restaurant and finally tell the truth. She did it because she believed I was worth fighting for. Even when I did not believe it myself. If someone in your life has ever made you feel like your work does not matter, like your contributions do not count, like you should be grateful for the privilege of being used, I want you to hear what my mother said. You are worth more than they know. Do not forget that. You do not need a secret file or a courtroom judgment to know your value, but you do need to stop accepting other people's definition of what you deserve. You do need to stop shrinking yourself to fit inside someone else's idea of your worth. And you do need to understand that setting boundaries is not betrayal, it is survival. My family is fractured. It may never fully heal. But I am not fractured. Not anymore. I am whole in a way I never was when I was standing in that kitchen at 2 a.m, mopping floors for free. telling myself that someday my father would see me. He did not see me. My mother did, and she made sure the whole world would too. That is not a happy ending. It is a real one. And real endings do not need applause, they just need truth. Thank you for listening to my story. If it meant something to you, if it made you feel less alone, please share it, like, subscribe, and check the description for more stories like this. 1. Because everyone deserves to be paid, everyone deserves to be seen, and everyone deserves to know their worth.